Hello, this is Congressman Brad Sherman, live from Washington, D.C. We're about to have another one of our telephone town hall meetings. First, a little logistics. Write down the following number, 855-920-0548. If we get disconnected for any reason, just dial the toll-free number, 855-920-0548. I should point out that this town hall starts at 7. It'll end at about 8:10. We'll have our next telephone town hall in mid-December. It'll either be on December 13th, which I realize is Hanukkah, or the 18th, which conflicts with another religion, namely Monday Night Football, or on the 19th of December, which I realize is getting pretty close to Christmas. So we're going to try to work out which of those dates is best. And in any case, to find out about our next telephone town hall, you go to bradsherman.house.gov and click on Town Hall. You can then submit a question for us to address in our December Town Hall, and you can get the call-in information there. Now, for those unfamiliar with these telephone town halls, it's like a giant conference call. We'll have thousands of people involved. And in addition to taking questions from orally over the phone, we've invited people to submit questions in writing, and I will deal with a few of those as well. And even if you don't get your question answered directly, you will be able to express your opinion because we're going to have survey questions on important topics. You'll have a chance to indicate what your point of view is, and we'll announce the results during the telephone town hall. Now, if you want to be connected to my fine staff, you dial *3. You can either talk to my staff about a personal issue, or most of you would want to get in the queue to ask a question that's heard by thousands of residents across the valley and parts of the west side. Now, we've got people who have dialed in from all over the country and all over the world. That's fine. Listen in. Hope we're entertaining. But don't dial *3 unless you live in the 32nd Congressional District. This is a telephone town hall for the 32nd Congressional District of California. Now, number of people will be joining us 5 or even 10 minutes late, so I will re-announce some of that information. The 32nd Congressional District, as you know, includes the West and South San Fernando Valley, together with some areas on the west side, including Malibu, the Palisades, and Brentwood. Now, the U.S. government is incredibly complex. It was designed by people who feared and disliked the power of government, and I am part of the federal government. Many of you will have questions that are decided chiefly at the state or local level, and that's why we have city council members and county supervisors and state legislators who have similar events to this one, and you want to address state questions to state representatives. Now, I want to put in a pitch for our fine constituent service team. We have our office there in the Westcom building on Van Nuys Boulevard, right in the heart of America's best named city, Sherman Oaks. Our phone number is 818-501-9200. And on the line now, we have two of our people involved in helping people with constituent service matters, Scott Abrams, who heads the office, and the head of our constituent service operation, Lisa Montano. Now, let me put in a pitch for their work. Imagine a federal agency makes a mistake. It could happen. It could affect you. Could be Social Security. Could be the IRS. If you're a problem with any federal agency, give Scott or Lisa a call at 818-501-9200. They'll work very hard. They'll solve your problem, and then I, Brad Sherman, take the credit. It's an outstanding system. I want to talk particularly, though, about international travel because that's been a huge part of our operation. The passport system is broken, or at least incredibly slow. Renew your passport when it's got 10 more months to go, 11 more months to go. If, however, caught and you need to get a passport quickly on an emergency basis, give us a call at 818-501-9200. and this has been particularly important given events in the Middle East. We have helped people who wanted to travel to Israel. We've helped people get out of Israel on State Department ships and planes. I have, for about a decade, worked to make Israel a visa waiver country so that Israelis could visit the United States as easily as Europeans do. We got that approved finally in September, but it wasn't going to become effective till December. And so Israelis who wanted to leave Israel, come to the United States at this critical time, couldn't do so because they couldn't even get a visa because the Jerusalem embassy was closed. Well, we've made Israel a visa waiver country effective already, and we accelerated that, pushed the White House hard on it, and we have also helped people work with the State Department to get out of Gaza. I want to point out our military academies, West Point, Annapolis Air Force Academy. If you know someone interested in attending, thank them for their willingness to serve our country. Then contact Scott Abrams or Lisa Montano in the Sherman Oaks office, really in October of their senior year of high school, but I realize this is November. Can still get it done in November. So if you know a high school senior who's interested in going to the military academies, have them call us tomorrow. I'm told that we've made a number of outgoing calls. We have 3,000 to 3,500 people on the line, and if you've joined just recently, you're on Congressman Brad Sherman's telephone town hall. And if you want to be in queue to ask a question or to speak personally about a private matter to a member of my staff, dial *3. Now, if you're planning to visit Washington, give us a call as soon as you know when you're going to get here. And our phone number here in Washington is 202-225-5911. Ask for Melissa, ask for Sarah Martin, and they will set you up with the best tours. Once again, dial *3 if you want to ask a question. Now, there is a lot going on in Washington, and I'm going to cover some of it very briefly, and then I want to open it up to questions. We have a new Speaker of the House. His name is Mike Johnson, and if you didn't know who Mike Johnson was 3 weeks ago, you're certainly not alone, but I certainly know Mike Johnson. For those of you who really follow Congress, you'll get this. I view Mike Johnson as Jim Jordan in a jacket. He is one of the most hardline and extreme members of the Republican majority, but he not only dresses nicely, he's mild-mannered, has a bit of a smile, and it's somewhat disarming until you realize his views. But he voted against certifying the 2020 election. He is on record supporting the most extreme conservative policies on a woman's right to choose and LGBTQ, and on climate change. He is for a total nationwide ban on abortion, and is focusing on impeaching Joe Biden. So this House remains divided, and the Republican Party did not move toward the center when it put Mike Johnson in the Speaker's chair. So we've got a new Speaker. We also just this week passed a continuing resolution. Perhaps it's a pretty low standard to hold the federal government to, but at least we're not going to shut down the government, at least not before January 19th for many of the functions, and February 2nd for other functions. We are continuing programs in effect on automatic pilot from the bills we passed for the year that ended. We end our year on September 30th. It's a fiscal year. So it's a clean CR, which is what Democrats insisted upon. It maintains funding at the same level, but of course we've had some inflation over the last 12 to 15 months, and so in effect programs are getting 4% less than they were the prior year. Now, in addition to the regular ongoing spending that that is part of the that is to avoid a government shutdown. The president has proposed 102 billion, actually 105 billion of extraordinary spending due to international events. 61.4 of that is for Ukraine, 14.3 billion for Israel, 14 billion is for the border, 7.4 billion is for the Indo-Pacific, and 19 billion is for humanitarian efforts in Ukraine and in Israel and Gaza and other places. What is not in the bill but should be is something for Armenia, which there may be some humanitarian effort for Armenia, but none of it is locked into the bill. There's money for humanitarian aid that the president could spend in Armenia, where 120-some thousand people have been ethnically cleansed from the region of Nagorno-Karabakh or Artsakh, and now have had to make a new life in Armenia. Armenia has also been threatened with invasion. There is nothing in this bill, and there should be, to provide defense for Armenia. So this is an enormous bill because we face enormous international challenges. What Speaker Johnson did is bring to the floor a bill with only the $14.3 billion for Israel, and then he said he was offsetting it so it wouldn't drive up the deficit by cutting roughly $14.3 billion from the IRS audit budget. This is, of course, absurd. The federal government cannot make money by cutting IRS auditors. Believe it or not, IRS auditors get people to pay taxes and produce far more than their salaries. And so the Congressional Budget Office said in this effort to say the bill was paid for, it made it cost the bill cost at least twice as much. I voted against that, not because I don't support the $14.3 billion for Israel, but because once you start this process, that when you have an extraordinary international need, you start cutting any domestic program. This time it's the IRS. Next time it'll be money for food stamps. Once you pit the extraordinary foreign programs and aid with the domestic, you're going to undermine support in this country for foreign aid. We have never tried to offset extraordinary international spending. And once we start down that road, I think support for not only Israel but everything we do internationally is going to be eroded very, very quickly. So that's the spending bills. Just today, they issued the ethics report on Mr. George Santos, one of our members of Congress from New York State. And about a week ago, I refused to vote to expel George Santos because that resolution was brought to the floor before the ethics report was released. And I said, no, let's wait for the report. Well, now the report is out, and he hasn't been convicted in a court of law of crimes, but the ethics report shows that certainly for purposes of House ethics, major criminal activity, stealing money in huge quantities from his own campaign, lying on his campaign finance reports. And keep in mind, there's some who have looked at George Santos and say, look, the man lied about everything on his resume. He claimed his grandparents were Holocaust survivors, just kind of made that up. And that's outrageous and wrong. And he lied to voters, and that's how he got elected. We ought to expel him. And I have not taken that position because I don't want to go down the road of looking at everything people say in a campaign and say, well, was that 100% true? Was it 89% true? Oh, it's only 88% true. We're going to expel you. Campaigns are campaigns. And if you're lying in a campaign, the right response is for your opponent to identify those lies. I might add that George Santos' Democratic opponents did a terrible job of research and explanation. And so if what you're doing isn't criminal, you probably should not be expelled. In this case, though, the Ethics Committee has gone through extensive hearings and extensive report, documented felony after felony, and I will vote to expel George Santos when the matter comes up, as I think it will in early December. Finally, I had a little bit of personal excitement yesterday. I was at the Democratic National Headquarters at a meeting with about 12 Democratic members of Congress and about 25, 30 candidates from around the country. These are the people who, frankly, I want to win. If they win, we will be in the majority in the next Congress, which starts in 2025. And at that point, there was a demonstration. The Capitol Police came in. They said, this is a violent demonstration. We have to get you out. They whisked us out through the basement and the garage. The Capitol Police have reported that 6 officers were injured, punched, pepper sprayed, and that this was a violent demonstration. And I want to say a word about the Capitol Police and why first of all, they were very professional last night. They showed the level we can trust them. But on January 6th, 2021, the Capitol Police saved our democracy. There was an effort to prevent the certification of the Electoral College votes for Joe Biden. And due to the work of the Capitol Police, ultimately that went forward according to the Constitution. And so these are officers that I work with every day. I trust them. I trust my own safety to them. And when they are pepper sprayed and punched and beat up, I take that very seriously. And of course, these were people who said they were peace demonstrators. What else can I tell you here at the outset? Working to protect our environment, we passed the Inflation Reduction Act, which is the biggest thing any country in the world has done on climate change. And of course, I joined with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in reintroducing the Green New Deal. We're fighting to make sure that Republicans do not cut federal aid to education by 28%, as they did in their most recent proposal. We are working for an end to gun violence, including background checks, safe storage, banning high-capacity magazines. Fighting to protect Social Security, I have co-sponsored the Social Security 2100 Act, which would safeguard Social Security not only for current retirees, but through the end of this century. And, of course, fighting for a woman's right to choose. We were able to pass through the House. Of course, last year it was blocked in the Senate. The Women's Health Protection Act, which would codify the rights in Roe v. Wade. We also passed through the House. Again, it was blocked by the Senate. The Ensuring Women's Right to Reproductive Freedom Act, guaranteeing the right to travel. As you may know, there are efforts by some states to incarcerate women because they were found driving to another state in order to obtain an abortion. So we've got an awful lot to cover. I haven't even had a chance to talk about rail service through the Sepulveda Pass, but I think we'll get to that in our questions. And I want to remind you, if you want to be in queue to ask a question, please ask just one question, because we've got a lot of people. There are already a lot of people in the queue. One question, and I'll ask you to ask a question only if you live in the 32nd Congressional District. With that, Don, let's hear from our first question.
Right, we got a question from Ted concerning the continuing resolution. Ted, you are on now.
Hi, Representative Sherman. Can you hear me?
I hear you well. What town are you from?
I'm from Granada Hills.
Good to hear you.
Yeah. So within the continuing resolution, I'm glad to hear that you voted against it because of obviously the absurd proposition of the new speaker of offsetting the costs with
Yeah,
the
that
IRS.
I do want to interrupt you there. There's a technical. I voted for the continuing resolution. The bill you're focused on was Mike Johnson's version of the supplemental.
And was that tied to the aid package?
Yeah, that was not a bill that dealt with the whole government. That was a bill that did only two things: it funded Israel and defunded the IRS, and I voted against it.
Okay, so I'm glad that you voted against it.
Good.
I mean, I just wanted to express how disgusted I am with your mischaracterization of peaceful protests in D.C. yesterday, and also the fact that you have blood on your hands and that you are standing with Israel in the genocide of the Palestinian people.
I couldn't disagree with you more, but I will say this. When the Capitol Police give a report as to what happened, and I didn't see it, I was in the building, not outside, but when the Capitol Police give a report, that's a report you can count on. These are the people that saved us on January 6th. These are the people that I see in a high level of professionalism every day. And as to what's happening in the Middle East, I bet you I get another question on that, and I'll address it at that time. Let's go on to the next question.
Okay, Congressman, we have Sarah from Woodland Hills, I believe, concerning civil rights. You are on now, Sarah.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'd like to know when or if you can or will have the U.S. Attorney General crack down on civil rights violations of Jewish students on the college campuses.
That's interesting because that is one of the things I was working on today, and I've been working on it for almost 20 years. While your focus is on the Justice Department, the real enforcement agency is the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Education. We passed Title VI back in the 1960s. It says that students should not be interfered with because of their national origin or race. So we had to fight in the Bush administration to get a recognition that that law protected Jewish students, because there's an argument. Is being Jewish a religion, a national origin, a civilization? There's a case from the 1800s that says that the Jews are a race. That's what the court thought a century and a half ago. And we got a decision that was made, then reversed, and then made again that says that the Civil Rights Act does apply to anti-Semitism. The second issue, and the reason I was on the phone with the head of the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Education, and remember, it's the Department of Education that provides a lot of aid to universities around this country. The argument is you've got to define anti-Semitism. You can't fight it if you don't define it. And I was also on the phone today with the president of Yale University. And in both cases, I'm urging them to adopt the same definition of anti-Semitism that our State Department uses. Now, the reason for that is, first, it's good for our foreign policy, because if we're going to criticize the University of Bucharest for anti-Semitism using a particular standard, we should use the same standard for Berkeley. It's a little disingenuous to have a standard that our State Department applies in evaluating anti-Semitism around the world that we're unwilling to use here in the United States. But second, and most importantly, is that any one of the definitions, and there are several, but the one the State Department uses now, says that if you call for the abolition of Israel and the ethnic cleansing of all Jews from the river to the sea, that is anti-Semitic. And I know people say, oh, it's just anti-Zionist. You know, if I said abolish Albania, you could correctly identify me as anti-Albanian. If you say Poland should go from the Baltic to the Carpathians, and the Slovak Republic should be abolished, I'd be anti-Slovak. So calling for the abolition of the only Jewish state is anti-Semitic. It's been accepted as such not only by our State Department but by so many countries around the world. It needs to be in writing and applicable definitively. Now, the State Department definition is one that is considered and reviewed in evaluating anti-Semitism. Then the next thing is the efforts to exclude Students for Justice in Palestine from our campuses. Columbia has done that. Georgetown, I believe, has done that. And that is because they are so supportive of Hamas. They rejoiced in the deaths on January 7th. And so I don't know whether I was able to persuade the president of Yale to move in that direction. And technically, the Yale entity is not part of the international organization. So I am pushing the Department of Education to enforce our laws against anti-Semitism, particularly on campus. And to do that, they have to define anti-Semitism. Otherwise, people will say, I'm not anti-Jewish. I just want to ethnically cleanse the Middle East and destroy the only Jewish state. To which my response is, would you really say death to Albania? Doesn't mean that you're anti-Albanian. Let's move on to the next question.
Okay, Congressman, we have Zachary from somewhere in the valley has a question about a ceasefire. Zachary, you are on now.
Zachary? Zachary, are you there?
Hold on one second, Congressman. I got the little technical issue I'm working through, and now you're on, Zachary.
Hey, Zachary, what town do you live in?
Encino.
Good.
All right. Hi, Representative Sherman. My name is Zach, and as a constituent of your district, I ask that you please support a ceasefire. There have been over 11,000 deaths reported so far, over 4,000 of which have been children. I feel disgusted to be an American and a Democrat while you support the continuing genocide of the Palestinians and support the police attacking peaceful Jewish protesters opposing said genocide. I implore you to support a ceasefire for the sake of the constituents and the Palestinian constituents, especially in your district, of which I know many, and I please do so because this is a horrendous tragedy and crime that the U.S. is committing against and basically defenseless people, only to expand a further genocidal and apartheid state that causes significantly more harm and death. Thank you.
Well, first I want to address the incident last night. I was there, and thank God the Capitol Police were there. And second, to have people call in and say the Capitol Police are lying, you weren't here on January 6th. You didn't see what they did. You didn't see how they put their lives on the line. You didn't see how they saved your country. And to call them liars is just wrong. Second, as to the ceasefire, your question is quite similar to a number of questions that were submitted as RSVP questions from online. And so I want to shout out to Brian McGacklin of Valley Village, Ms. Ortiz from Chatsworth, Sebastian, our Ujo from Canoga Park, and Jasmine Sheldman from Van Nuys, and although he doesn't live in our district, Robert Lentz from Sylmar. All of them have asked the exact same question. We all want to see the violence end in Gaza immediately. But what we don't want is the program that Hamas officially announced through its high-ranking official a week ago. He said, and he didn't say it in English, so that their plan is what they want to do is first rampage in Israel and kill 1,200 people, then retreat behind their human shields, then regroup, and they need a short-term ceasefire to do that, and then repeat. Hamas has announced they want to do the same thing as they did on October 7th, second, third, fourth, fifth time, and as many times as it takes to destroy Israel. Now, and the spokesman or the official was very clear. He said second, third, fourth, fifth, and as many times as it takes. So I don't think people should be duped into thinking that allowing the regrouping is a way to peace, because they've announced what they want to do. Rampage, retreat, regroup, repeat. Rampage, retreat, regroup, repeat. And that cycle of violence and mass murder is not peace. Now, there are a few people who aren't duped. There are a few people who praised what happened on October 7th, and want it to happen again and again and again and again until many tens of thousands of Israelis are killed. And so those people are not dupes, and I shouldn't call them that. They're just people who want to see as many Israeli civilians killed as possible. And certainly Hamas leadership is in that category. So what we need to see for a ceasefire is the immediate release of the hostages and the disarmament of Hamas. And if we could get that done today, we could stop the killing today. And that's what the demonstrators last night, instead of beating up police, should have been doing. They should have been calling for Hamas to release and disarm. Let's go on to the next question.
Okay, Congressman, we have a question from, I'm going to botch this name, Pantia, I believe, regarding the Department of Veterans Affairs. You are on now. Here.
Hi, Congressman Sherman. So my name is Ponty. I go by my middle name Lexi, and I had been on the call, last time too.
Well, I'm glad you're finally able to ask a question.
Yeah, I knew this continuing resolution was going to happen again. And I know President Biden, for us that are federal government employees, had signed, for us, because as I like to say, it's based on Congress about us getting our raise and everything, and he had signed something. But what is the status of it, to go into effect? Do you have any news about it? Because I know he had talked about it, he had proposed something, but has there been any other discussions about it?
I don't have a lot of expertise on this. It doesn't come before either of my committees. It's my understanding that all federal employees are getting a COLA, and that has gone into effect, or will go into effect at the time it traditionally goes into effect. And I understand from your question that you work for the VA. Thank you for taking care of our veterans.
Thank you. I've been doing it for 17 years.
Keep doing it.
Thank you so much.
Let's go on to the next question.
Okay, Congressman, we have a question about banking from Gregory from Sherman Oaks. You are on now.
Hello.
Hello, Gregory.
Oh, hello, Mr. Sherman. This is Gregory. I have a question about public banks. What are your thoughts about this much-discussed topic and the value and feasibility of public banks, perhaps at the state or major city level? And should the U.S. Congress pass legislation to promote the establishment of a state or city, or maybe even a national public bank, and get some public banking going for especially the unbanked?
I think that North Dakota has such an entity. I don't see us doing that at the federal level. I think other states are free to do it. I'm not. It seems good because you'd have nonprofit state government efforts to provide financial institutions. I've been a strong supporter of the credit union movement. I'm not sure that government is always as efficient as it sets out to be. The one area where state government could be helpful, because the federal government has dropped the ball, is in marijuana banking. You drive up and down Ventura Boulevard, you see a lot of dispensaries, and you reflect on the fact that they can't accept credit cards. They can't deposit checks. And that's because of federal law. And so they've got huge quantities of cash. Oh, gee, what could go wrong? And so the number one thing we have to do here is to pass the Safe Banking Act, which we passed through the House but installed in the Senate, to make sure that those dispensaries that are doing what's legal under state law are able to bank. If California wanted to follow North Dakota, then I'd be all for it. I haven't heard a state ask the federal government to do anything to facilitate a state government bank. Now we're going to go on to a survey question, and this is a survey question I ask every town hall, and it's always the first one because it's the one that pollsters ask all the time. Do you approve of President Biden's performance as president so far? Press 1 if you approve. Press 2 if you disapprove of how Biden is handling his position, and press 3 if you're unsure. And now let's go on to the next question from the floor.
Okay, Congressman, we've got Mary with a question about gun control, and I do not know where Mary is from, but we'll find out, I guess. Here you go, Mary.
Hey, Mary, where are you from?
Hi, Brad. I'm very concerned about the upsurge in crimes and violence across our nation and the smash and grab robberies that have been going on here in the Valley. Also, the fentanyl and other drugs in schools and around other places. And also the fact that criminals and mentally deranged people can get guns so easily. It really is scary.
It is, and you've got baked into there so many different questions. I'll address a few of them. We need background checks that actually are effective and nationwide, because it's not that hard if you can't buy a gun in L.A. to go to Vegas. And the mass shooting that we had in the San Fernando Valley was a gentleman who came from the state of Washington with many guns in his van. That was 20 years ago, but we still remember it. As to fentanyl, the president has announced an important deal with China, where they're going to very carefully monitor and prevent the export from China of the precursor chemicals. The precursor chemicals come from China, then they're mixed together in Latin America, chiefly Mexico, and then imported into the United States. And don't blame migrants for that. They come in with goods on trucks and in cars through the regular points of entry. The people who are driving those vehicles are driving into the country legally. It's just what they're doing is illegal. They're importing fentanyl. So, and then clearly we need to take organized shoplifting very seriously. And I think DAs around the country are beginning to do that. It's one thing if a teenager steals a candy bar. It's another thing when a group descends on a store. We got the results of our question on Biden, and it's almost identical to the results we had last time. On October 18th, we asked the same question. Today's results, 73% approve of Biden, Last time it was 72. 20% disapprove of Biden. Last time it was 19. And unsure is down to 7 rather than 9 last time. So let's ask another survey question. And this also relates to Biden and his actions in the Middle East. And I just want to say my own view on this is I think that in dealing with Ukraine, but especially in dealing with the Middle East, Joe Biden showed us what his experience in the Senate, his expertise in foreign policy, how important that is. It's the best reason to have elected him president. And so you'll know how I would have answered this survey. But which of the following describes your view of President Biden's response to the crisis in the Middle East? Press 1 if you think he's handled it correctly. Press 2 if you think that he should be significantly more supportive of Israel, less critical of Israel. Press 3 if you think he should be more supportive of the Palestinians and more critical of Israel, and less willing to provide aid to Israel. And press 4 if you're unsure. 1 for correctly, 2 that he should be much more supportive of Israel, 3 that he should be much more supportive of the Palestinians, and 4 if unsure. And with that, why don't we take one of our questions that were submitted in advance. This from Margaret Sullivan in Chatsworth. Are Biden and the Democrats gearing up to defeat Trump? Trump's plans are frightening. We must do everything to beat his plans and destroy democracy. Couldn't agree more. We are gearing up. That's why I was at the DCCC and DNC building last night. We were organizing to make sure that we're effective, particularly in the close congressional districts around the country. You should realize that we face some headwinds in these other candidacies. Joe Manchin were to run for president, that would hurt Biden. You've got Cornel West, who is not terribly well known, but those who know him know that he's an African-American socialist philosopher. None of those, nobody voting for Cornel West was thinking of voting for Donald Trump. All those votes come from Biden. Kennedy's candidacy is a mixed bag. Jill Stein is the reason why we lost the presidency in 1996. She's also running, and her votes were decisive in Hillary not winning those key states. And then I might add, of course, Al Gore would have been president had it not been for Ralph Nader's candidacy. So these third-party candidacies almost always really hurt the Democrats. But we do have a strong record to run on. We've got 2 of the strongest years of job growth in history. We are providing significant, although not as much as we wanted to, student loan relief. We've created 11 million new jobs since the beginning of the Biden presidency. He's taken over 100 actions to lower household energy costs. You know about the $35 limit per month for insulin. 750,000 new manufacturing jobs. Record low unemployment for Hispanics. Record low unemployment for African Americans. Record low employment for people with disabilities. We've got a strong record, but winning is going to take every bit of effort. And look, this is nonpartisan. There are people on the line who would prefer to see Trump reelected or return to the White House, and all of those, everything I just said can be put in reverse. That is to say, the third-party candidacies would help if Trump's your candidate. So, as to the results of our second survey question, some 54% say that Biden has handled it correctly. 18% say that he should support Israel more. 21% say support Palestinians more. 7% unsure. So almost exactly equal on both sides of the 54% that say that Biden is handling it correctly. Let's go to the next question from the floor.
Okay, Congressman, we have Paul from Woodland Hills has a question about the SALT deduction. Paul, you are on now.
Thank you very much. Just one comment. With respect to Hamas and the people dying in Gaza, can you imagine how many Israelis would have died if we hadn't had the Iron Dome, which repelled 6,000 rockets from Hamas? My question is there any mood amongst the Democratic portion of the Congress to repeal the 2017 Reform Tax Act, which is questionably a reform of tax act, which really affects people in the blue states with higher taxes, county, property, and state due to our higher worth of our properties?
I voted against the bill that did this to us, and I have supported every effort to reverse it. You should be able to deduct your state and local taxes when you are figuring your income for federal income tax purposes. Your federal income tax should reflect your ability to pay, and if you make $100,000, but you pay pick a number, $8,000 in state and local taxes. Well, that $8,000 isn't available to you. That isn't your money anymore. It's gone. Hell, if it's income tax, it's sucked right out of your paycheck, and if it's property tax, by God, you're going to pay it. So the ability of someone to pay, which should be the basis for the income tax, is their income reduced by their state and local taxes. So I strongly support that. The driving force behind getting rid of it was a belief by right-wing think tanks here in Washington that if you deprive people of a deduction for their state and local taxes, places like California would reduce the size of government, provide less benefits to their citizens, and shrink government and reduce their taxes. That has not happened. Now, as to the pressure to make this change comes from virtually all the Democrats and very few Republicans, chiefly from Long Island and Orange County. And it is possible that it gets done as part of a bigger package. So with that, I want to go to a question submitted in advance by Teresa Austin of Studio City. I'm concerned that the war in Israel is taking focus off of Ukraine. Does Congressman Sherman support continued aid to Ukraine in the amount they need to beat Russia? I believe that Russian aggression, if not stopped, will mean Americans fighting in European NATO countries. I strongly support aid to Ukraine. The president is asking for 4 times as much for Ukraine as for Israel, and I support that. Ukraine is fighting a bigger war against a tougher opponent. And I am not certain that even if we do provide the aid to Ukraine, that they will be fully successful. But I do believe that they'll be at least partially successful, and they deserve that chance. If Putin is able to take parts of Ukraine now, he'll take more of Ukraine later, and then he'll be after NATO countries such as the Baltic states. So now, I don't blame Israel for taking the spotlight off of Ukraine. It wasn't like Israelis were sitting around on October 6th and saying that, oh, gee, we'd like the spotlight. I also want to respond to the earlier questioner who pointed out the Iron Dome and the rockets. Keep in mind, every one of those 6,000 rockets sent from Gaza into Israel is a war crime. There is no attempt by Hamas to shoot those rockets at any military target. They are aimed at the center of cities and small towns. They are there for each one is an attempt to kill as many Israeli civilians as possible. The law of armed conflict calls for just the opposite, and Israel's complying, and that is to do everything possible to go after military targets and to minimize civilian deaths. And I do want to comment about how well Israel has done this. When we fought World War II, Korea, and the Vietnam War, we didn't provide food shipments to Germany, Japan, or North Vietnam. Israel does. And oh, by the way, the U.S., its ally, pays for the food. We didn't provide fuel to North Vietnam or to Germany. In fact, not only not providing the fuel, we bombed every refinery, every fuel depot. We did everything possible to deprive them of fuel. And we certainly, in any of our bombings during World War II, the Korean War, or Vietnam, we never warned the other side, oh, this target is going to be bombed tomorrow. Israel does in many cases. So we've just completed Veterans Day. I'm very proud of the American military and the willingness that they have and the insistence that they have to follow the rules of armed conflict and the law of armed conflict. Israel, I think, has gone even beyond what our behavior was in our major wars. And I also admire Biden for pushing Israel to make sure to do that. Keep in mind, Israel's decision to send infantry in on the ground, and rather than to do everything from the air, means more. It means fewer Palestinian civilian deaths and more Israeli soldier deaths. And very few countries would absorb additional casualties of their own people in order to prevent civilian casualties on the other side. Let's open it up for another question.
Okay, Congressman, we have Tony who has a question about inflation. Tony, you are on now.
Hi there. Hi, Congressman. I just wanted to ask if Biden is going to be running any ads in the near future with regards to inflation and how that all started with COVID and all the ships that were in the docks and out in the sea, the trucks that were having problems getting merchandise in, because people are missing the fact that this is how it all started and how the prices, when they went up, these companies and grocery markets were able to keep the prices high because they're getting the money for it. So what are your thoughts on that? Are they going to do some kind of ad, like an info ad, because they've got plenty of friends in Hollywood to make a good video?
Look, COVID threw the entire world economy off. There is more inflation in our peer countries, other rich countries in the world, Europe in particular, and in the EU area where the euro is used, than in the United States. They don't have Biden in Europe. You can't blame European inflation on Biden. What they did have is the COVID catastrophe. Now, you can say, oh, we did too much in dealing with COVID. That's easy to say now. Who knew what COVID would mean? We saved an awful lot of lives and hurt our economy significantly by the steps we took to deal with COVID. And we preserved the jobs part of our economy and the ability of people to have money with the COVID relief economic programs and the PPP program. And we prevented a recession, which is what you'd expect in a COVID shutdown. On the other hand, we do have inflation. The problem we have is people will, even if you bring inflation to zero in the next 10 months, people will say the price of onions is higher now than it was 4 years ago. Stopping inflation will not reverse inflation. And what's actually interesting is if you reverse inflation, you really mutilate an economy. That's called deflation. And if you think inflation is bad, in the 1930s we had deflation. It was much worse. Other countries with deflation have suffered much worse. So we have to, the president is focusing on junk fees, focusing on the cost of pharmaceuticals, doing what's possible to stabilize oil prices, gas prices. and standing with labor to raise wages so people can afford the prices. So far, I can't say that that's been fully successful, but so far the economy, the campaign hasn't started, and I think to keep the economy from a recession in the aftermath of COVID is a tremendous economic accomplishment. Whether the president gets credit for it depends on the psychology of the American people, and as you point out, the cleverness of political ads next year. Let's do another survey question, if I can find the survey questions here. And we've got them, and this will be survey question C. Our current national defense spending is 4.6% of our GDP. Now, that includes not only what we spend in the Pentagon, but veterans benefits. After all, we have veterans benefits as a way of compensating people for serving in the military. So we spend $877 billion on our defense budget, and another $272 billion rewarding our soldiers with those veterans benefits. So, knowing what our defense spending is, press 1 if you think we're spending too much on national defense. Press 2 if you think we're spending the right amount on national defense. Press 3 if you think we're spending too little on national defense and need to increase that budget. Press 4 if you're unsure. Let's go on to a question from the floor.
Okay, we have Greg from Winnetka, who has a question about the situation with the speaker. Greg, you are on now.
Okay, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. And correct me if I am misunderstanding this, but at the beginning of the year, weren't the rules in Congress amended to where an objection from a single member of Congress, such as yourself, against the Speaker of the House can result in, what is it, a vote against him, basically a vote of no confidence?
To vacate the speakership. Yes. Now, to actually put it into context, that was the rule for a couple of centuries, but it didn't matter because nobody would ever do it. We live in a more contentious time. Democrats changed that rule to set a much higher threshold. Now, either party leadership can make such a motion. It's, if the speaker doesn't have majority support, that action can be taken.
I think it's something that should be strongly considered by the Democratic members because of the Christian nationalists who we have now in charge of the Speaker's chair in Congress. We have somebody who believes that the Earth is 6,000 years old and the dinosaurs lived with men. We have basically a Neanderthal there heading up Congress.
And but he's a nice, soft-spoken Neanderthal.
Oh, yes,
right.
And he looks so cool in his glasses. But
yes,
the thing about
I will point out, if Democrats were to introduce a motion to vacate the chair, every Republican would vote against it. The only way such a motion would actually pass if it was made by a Republican and was able to pick up, in this case, or in the most recent case, 8 Republican votes, even 5 Republican votes, depending upon whether George Santos is still amongst us. So it would take a Republican to bring a motion that would be successful. Democrats could do it as a sign of displeasure, as a shot across the bow. But in terms of it being successful, it took a Republican to make the motion. Let me go on to one more survey question, and that is question D. Do you support the Women's Health Protection Act that would restore the rights that were previously in Roe versus Wade? If you support the act, press 1. If you oppose it, press 2. If you're unsure, press 3. Let's try to sneak in a couple more questions. Let's take the next one, Don.
Okay, we have Lilia from Tarzana with a question about Ukraine. You are on now.
This will build on
Hello?
Teresa's Austin's question. Yes.
Hello?
Hello, Brad Sherman.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you
Hello,
fine.
Congressman. My question is actually about Ukrainian refugees that are coming here under United for Ukraine program. And I was just recently made aware that all the federal benefits that they were receiving were cut starting this fiscal year, October 1st. And now people that are coming from the war zone literally have nothing to, no help from federal government. And I know they have sponsors to support them because I'm one of the sponsors.
Mm-hmm.
I recently supported a family of 4, which is coming next month. And, I was very surprised to find that, what is happening now. And, I could provide them with housing. They could stay at my own place. I'm offering that to them. I could even provide them with food. But I can't provide them with health care. And we have a family of 4 coming from war zone, and they have absolutely no health care that is available to them because it is no longer allowed under the federal government laws. And I would like to ask you if this is going to change with the pass of the budget that is, kind of stolen right now. And is there a hope that these people will actually get help that they need? Because I personally can't help them with, medical care.
Look,
and I honestly, frankly, don't know what to do.
I'll have to admit I don't know the precise status of aid for Ukrainian refugees. We should be providing the same kind of benefits that we were providing a year or 2 ago. That being said, what we want is for the people of Ukraine to be able to live in all of the territory of the Ukraine, and we need this war to end, and hopefully on very favorable terms. So I'll take a look at this in the appropriations process in the next couple of weeks. Certainly, we should be providing the same level of benefit for those who arrive in late 2023 as those who arrived in 2022. I want to announce the results of one of the survey questions on the amount we spend on defense. 24% say we spend too much, 30% the right amount, 24% say we spend too little, and 22% are unsure. You couldn't have a more divergence of opinion on that. Just exactly equal amounts of those who think we should go up and those who think we should go down. And now for the other survey question as to the Women's Health Care Act, 86% support, 8% oppose, 6% are unsure. Let's go on to another question from the floor.
Okay, Congressman, I think we have one last question on the Middle East from Max from Studio City. Max, you are on now.
Hi, Congressman. My question is what you plan to do to designate Qatar as a state sponsor of terror.
Our relationship with Qatar is very complicated. We have a huge military base there. On the same, they run Al Jazeera, which sometimes acts as a mouthpiece for some very bad actors in the Middle East. Some of Hamas's top leaders are protected in Qatar, but it was President Bush who asked Qatar to take them in. I hope that we can push Qatar in the right direction. Their government has an affinity for the ideology of the Muslim Brotherhood, but then again, so does the government of Turkey, which is a NATO member. At the same time, the government of Egypt views the Brotherhood as a mortal threat, as do certain of our other allies in the Middle East. So I wish I had an answer for you for Qatar. I do think that the Hamas leaders in Qatar should be extradited to the United States for the crime of killing well over a dozen Americans who were killed and well over that on January 7th or October 7th. Excuse me, October 7th. Let's. I guess we can squeeze in at least one more question. Oh, wait a second. I'm going to do one from the floor, and that was Tracy Fitzgerald from Encino. Which metro design are you leading towards in terms of rail through the Sepulveda Pass? We received some number estimates from MTA. It's clear that the subterranean it gets people to the west side faster. On the other hand, we're still waiting for information about cost. And just as if I wouldn't tell you which car I was going to favor until you told me what the price tag was, we got to look at cost. And the cost is relevant, A, because you want to be fiscally responsible, B, because the more it costs, the longer it'll take before they start building it. What the slowest thing, I mean, we should have had this train 30 years ago. The hard part isn't building the train. The hard part is getting the money to build the train. More money, longer the delay. And then finally, and something I did a survey question on a couple of town halls ago, if the supporters of the monorail along the 405, as opposed to the subterranean, if they're right, and so far they have yet to provide details or to put their money where their mouth is, that they can go from the valley to LAX for the same amount of money that a tunnel can get to Westwood, that was the most popular of the alternatives in the town hall survey question I did a while ago. One more question from the floor.
Okay, Congressman, we have a question from Ross regarding the conduct of elections. Ross, you are on now.
Hello, Congressman Sherman. I'm Ross from Sherman Oaks. President Biden says that this is one of the most important elections in modern history. The majority of Americans do not believe that President Biden can win against Donald Trump in a runoff, and many question whether or not the president will function cognitively for a whole second term. The president is currently over 11 points behind Trump and at an all-time low in his job approval ratings. In a democratic country, why are we not having an open primary to select the best Democratic candidate to stand for the general election?
Well, we have an open system. My colleague, Dean Phillips, is running. I disagree with that decision, but it's certainly open, and no one is blocking him, as is Marianne Williams, who lives in California. Dean Phillips offers views on issues that are quite similar to those of Biden, and is a different personality and a different age. I personally think that if we were to have 6 or 8 major candidates all running against Biden, that Biden would ultimately win, and that there would be a 4-month, 5-month circular firing squad. But I'm not a decision maker in this in any way. I can only decide that I'm not running for president, and you can think of so many reasons why that's true. So if anybody wants to run, they can. There are a lot of ambitious and knowledgeable people in the Democratic Party. They've all thought that the best chance of beating Trump is to unite behind Biden rather than have, it's not like, 8 people can get together in the smoke-filled room, which is the way they did it 100 years ago, and say, here's this governor who just won in Kentucky. Let's make them our candidate. If they can win Kentucky, they can win anywhere. No, the way that you have a contested race is the circular firing squad, a lot of people yelling at each other. You may get the strongest candidate. You may not. And so, if you think Biden is the best candidate we could possibly have, great. But if you think that someone else is, reflect on the idea that that person you can't just pray to God and the next day that person is installed as the nominee. The process is debilitating. When we had a contest against Jimmy Carter, we lost. Lots of other reasons. Presidents that get challenged, as Gerald Ford was, tend to win their nomination and then lose in the general election. So again, running for president is above my pay grade. It's an open process, and I think that Biden has done an excellent job. I've known him for a long time. I do not see any cognitive impairment, it's hard to be up there on the stage. And Biden or anybody else at any age, you can always find a time when they said million when they meant to say billion. God knows I did that in my 40s, and I do it now on rare occasion. Somebody will look at the transcript of this town hall, and we'll find at least one of those mistakes. Now, we've come to the end. If I don't conclude this in another minute, our vendor's going to charge us a lot more money. Thank you for participating. You can get more information about our next town hall by going to bradsherman.house.gov, sign up, call in, and give us a question in advance. After this call is over, you'll be connected to our voicemail system. Please give me your email address, even if I already have it, since whether I'm allowed to notify you of the next town hall depends upon how I got your email address. And if I get it on this call, I can. You can also leave a message. Not everybody got to express their views, but everybody will have that chance with the voicemail system. I will not listen tonight. I will listen tomorrow. And I look forward to hearing all of you who want to say something that haven't had a chance to speak tonight. I want to thank you for demonstrating that people in our area are interested in what's going on to our country, and I look forward to joining you in mid-December for our next telephone town hall. This is Congressman Brad Sherman. Thank you very much.